Welcome to episode 96 of the Daniel Yoris podcast with today's guest, Anthony Kunkel. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Joined here today by my man, Anthony. Anthony, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. I think you and me have a few crossover points that are worth unpacking for people.
Yeah, this episode has been it's been a long time coming. It's been a few months now since we've kind of like been introduced to each other through the Wukiyo brand, which we'll certainly get into. But you've been through from following you quite a lot over the last few months of ending up the race season, your ankle injury, and stuff that we're all going to get into. But I just want to give you a quick chance to introduce yourself and like tell people who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the plug and the following. And it's always good to like actually have a social aspect to our social media, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, it's always every 6 months I feel like I'm a new human being, and that's really the ultimate privilege as I view it to what I'm doing and how I've managed to contrive this life for myself. And yeah, I guess I'm a restless biohacker kind of nerd that thinks that there's very little that I can't do if I really, really decide. I've been repeatedly shocked by how much I can get done when it works. It's just like, I looked at my training buddy this morning and we had another one of those moments, and we have one, I don't know, 7 to 14 times a week of just like looking at each other and being like, dude, it worked. It's like the thing, we're doing the thing. This is it. And with that in mind, I've managed to pull off a couple of national championship wins and represent Team USA abroad under the International Olympic Committee. And now I'm chasing the Olympic marathon trial standard, so 5:15 a mile for a marathon. And I'm just kind of mixing it up, coming from a really odd background. Most people come from 5K speed and extend themselves up to the marathon as they age into it, whereas I was really too curious for my own good probably and got into really long stuff at a younger age and just kind of got addicted to failure, really. It's so much fun to just kind of like, if you have the tolerance for it to not hate yourself and still dream big and dare big and swing for the fences every time, then it's shocking how forgiving you are to your past self and even how forgiving everyone else is. You think that the internet's full of haters, and I feel like my view has been that myself, my past self, my present self, and everybody around me tends to be more forgiving than I would anticipate, in the sense that you really only remember the wins. And so you think about like, man, that was so cool that you ran 6 hours and change over 100K. And then everybody immediately forgets, yourself included, the dropouts and the injuries and everything else. And so that's where I'm coming from. Just this academic curiosity, arm's length with myself kind of approach. And it's worked. It's resulted in enough success that I have a little bit of a platform, and that puts a lot of pressure on me to then try to explain what it is that I'm doing out here. Like, what am I learning? How do I earn my food every day? How do I earn my space on planet Earth here? And if all you're providing is fast times, I don't think that's enough. And so now that I have more and more of a base of results and people looking at me, I feel I take that very seriously to kind of like put out. I tell people I really like it. Like, maybe I should put it on a shirt or something, but when in doubt, put out, or when in doubt, put the fuck out. That usually is what it is. Of just, there's no room for doubt and existential dread when you're doing the thing. And so just shut up and do the thing and see what happens. And that's been the driving force for me. And, my venue is primarily ultra running, although I do a little bit of snowshoe racing, and I like to think that I'm fast enough to hold my own on the roads and on the trails and on any venue. And I have a pretty well-rounded repertoire of race results and things that I can do with my body. And then very recently I hopped into obstacle course racing just because I'm surrounded by training buddies that are doing it. And so I definitely have more talent in obstacle course running than I do in straight road running, because the people that are beating me are so unathletic, and that's why they're so good at running real fast. There's nothing to them. Whereas me, I have the gymnastics background and a martial arts background, and you can see it physically on my body. Like, I don't look like the people that I'm competing against. I look skinny by myself, and then you see me on a start line of a marathon, and you're like, dude, you are jacked outside your mind. Get out of the gym. And I'm like, I haven't been in the gym in 8 months or 15 months or whatever it's been. It's like, I don't touch anything heavier than a grocery bag. This is my body. And so it's just such a fun journey, man. I think that's where you and me overlap more than anything. This is something for everybody. This is not some elite thing. There's lessons to learn anywhere. And if it doesn't apply to the average person, if it's not going to make the average soccer mom enjoy her fitness routine more, then it has no value. No one cares about being faster. In the end of the day, at the end of my career, I won't even care how fast I went. I don't believe. And so I don't think anybody else should either. But obviously to take somebody that's not super talented in something and to make them appear talented or put in good results, that takes some finesse, but then that's shareable. So that's exciting, and that's who I am. That's what I'm about. That's what I'm doing here, I think.
It seems to me that the distance running sport, and this is all distances, anything that's not a sprint, is far more mature than short distances and most other sports, and that there seems to be this love of the pursuit of the whole thing. And maybe it's because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but maybe it's because that there's not a whole lot of money. The maybe the top marathon runners like maybe make some decent money in sponsorships and whatnot, but it's not some crazy spectator sport like football or basketball or something like that where there's no LeBron James kind of thing. And so it then becomes like, yeah, okay, you're the best in the world, but like, what did you really gain from that, and how do you bring it back? And this is another thing, that endless curiosity of the physical and what that translates to outside of this, like you were explaining to me right before we hit record, is just how to find these like other life experiences through running and through that exploration of self, if you will. And one thing that you were mentioning that I want to ask you right off the top was whether you think that your curiosity is something that actually hinders your performance. As you kind of alluded to, you're more built than other marathon runners. You do the obstacle course racing, you'll do shorter distances or way longer distances, whereas someone who like just trains marathons, like they just do that thing, and hyper specialization does become valuable at some point in one's athletic career. And what are your thoughts on the impact of your curiosity?
I mean, we'd have to define success, right? It'd have to get real deep real quick over here. Could I run a 2:15 marathon if I really, instead of a 2:17 or 2:18? I think so. I mean, maybe 2:13, 2:14. When I really look at the data and say, like, what if I just got emaciated? What if I just starved myself down? Or there's some less than savory ways that people do manage the weight thing anyway that I'm just not interested in. And I think I could, and I think it does all kind of go into the same bucket anyway. Once you're talking about an event longer than 4 minutes, you're talking about the aerobic system. Period, hands down. It doesn't matter if I do clean and jerks for 8 minutes. Like that's primarily an aerobic thing. The second you start going that long, there's no other way to fuel it, and so therefore it does kind of all go into the same bucket. I think I give up less than we would think, as like with our scientician hats on here, less than we would think you would give up. Um, and it's kind of things that I can't really strip away from my body anyway. It's kind of like muscle mass in my legs that just won't go anywhere. Like I'm never going to have a Northeast African build. Period. There's no amount of supplements or drugs or training that could ever make that happen. And so it's kind of embracing my well-roundedness that I have anyway. That I can't. I could, if I could trade it to the devil, I would, but I can't. So I might as well just do something with it. And so I'm not so sure that it. I would argue it doesn't rob me of anything internally. The curiosity being its own path brings me
Mm.
peace. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, I say that as somebody that like does morning pages every day and really tries to get all my ducks in a row and asks myself what I'm most afraid of and what I'm wasting and I'm asking myself. I don't have good answers for any of these things, but I'm asking myself these questions regularly, and that puts a certain severity or certainty to a lot of what I get into now in my tiny little corner of the world. And so when I say that it's bringing me peace, I mean I freaking mean that, man. There's nothing better than going out there and calling your shot and blowing up catastrophically and soaring too close to the sun. Or maybe it works, maybe it all works and it's smooth. Or
Mhm.
maybe I pissed off a few people last season by saying I'm going to do an untouchable goal at this 24-hour world champs. And not only that, but it's going to be easy. And people are like, "This guy's a dick." like people that didn't know me, and I heard a few people being like, "Oh, he's actually a nice guy." Like after they met the person, I'm like, "Yeah, like tell me what your goal is. I'll believe in you as strongly and as ferociously as I believe in myself in a freaking second. Like I'll be your first fan. Just tell me what you're gonna do. Show me that you're putting in the work." And so I think people get that wrong, and I just it's so much fun to do everything that you can as a human being. That if I had more bodies, I would have more fun. If I could recover infinitely, it would be more fun. I would do more with that. I think I'm not even scratching the surface of what my own curiosity would drive me into doing. And if that's costing me, I don't know, a few minutes, 5 minutes even onto my marathon time, so be it, man. This is a journey. To get any faster than that, it would involve specializing to the point that I'm bland. I think that's part of what, when we talk about running has no money in it, it's because runners are boring. You know, like the type of person who can put in 100 or 140 miles a week by themselves on the roads at particular paces and just like manage the pace and their hydration and their splits and all this stuff, they're boring people. Like on the whole, they're not people that you want to like hang out with. And I hang out with them plenty, so that's not, you know, and I am one of them to some extent, right? It's like, who am I? Like, people in glass houses here. But I think that's part of it. It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing of, you know, are runners boring because they don't have to be entertaining? That it's not incentivized to be entertaining. And really, you know, a guy like me talking about sacred sexuality and healing a knee injury with magic mushrooms and like all of this stuff, that's to me is the point. Like, that's integrating the athletic experience. And it's I cannot possibly split that away from the running and the race results. It's impossible to my mind. I just can't. They are the same thing. They're not even wedded things. They are the same thing. And you compare that to somebody that's sponsored by like Hoka or Nike or like some big, I probably shouldn't even name names, but it's like some big shoe company, right? And they want you to shut up and do fast race results so that the average people that are trying to qualify for Boston will buy those shoes because they saw you in a race in them. And that's an easy enough business model. Like, I'm not beefing with that business model. But what about this idea of an athlete pushing the dialogue? What about the idea of, you know, you're doing something that other people aren't doing? What if you learned something? You have to be learning something. I mean, almost definitively, you're to do something that other people can't do or haven't done or won't do. You're going to have lessons come out of that that normal people would benefit from and normal people wouldn't have access to otherwise without you speaking it. And I think of the few times where I've been gobsmacked by a piece of art, like a piece of physical art. And man, I want to say things and do things and show people things that give them that. Like, I want people to stop in their fucking tracks and be like, man, what if, I mean, and some of it is those, it's wedded with the idea of like taking me as some swaggering, arrogant person or something, because the level of confidence that it takes to do something that's never been done before is immense. I mean, it's almost the far end of the spectrum without any ability to argue against that. And so I think that's my driving force, but it's not just my life, right? It's like it's me actively living it and creating it. And so that's what I'm after with all of this. And yeah, I mean, I'm losing myself here probably, but it's just it's such a trip, man. And I want to be able to exchange that with people, and that's why I'm so grateful for, you know, venues like this where I know your following gets it, man. They're looking for these little secrets, and it's like, I think I have secrets for the first time in my life. I don't have to blush to say that, or I don't have to feel like I'm selling some product to say that. Like, I have secrets and you need them. And so here we are. We're gonna try to unpack some of these and try to take something inarticulate and off in the ether, and we're going to try to package it and gift it to people. And that's, to me, that is like a working definition of God right there.
I've always said that there's a lot of beauty and lessons that come from the extremities of life, be it something negative like war or famine or something like that, or something like an extreme athletic endeavor like something that you do. Because most people don't go to those places, don't push themselves to those physiological limits, and me included. This is not like a call out. Like, I've never run 50. I've never even run a 5K. Well, no, I've definitely run a 5K, but whatever. That's not the point. The point is, people don't go to those places. And so the things that you learn about yourself through those endeavors extrapolate back to regular life, and it probably gives you a huge advantage as far as like the branding and message awareness kind of stuff over other runners, in the fact that you are infinitely curious in other things. Your sole purpose is not, I only want to be the best marathon runner or the fastest marathon runner in the world. You want to do all of the things, which relates to most people. Most people want to be able to have a decent 5K time, a decent marathon time, but they also need to be able to play with their kids and like do other stuff, not just be solely focused
Yeah, I mean,
on the
that's the
one
real point,
endeavor.
right? That's the real point.
Exactly.
Like, that's real living. If what you're doing doesn't make you more alive and more articulate and a more defined human being, then what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
that's the real point of it all, is like, are you a better friend? Are you a better lover? Are you a better significant other? Are you a better, you know, family member? Which, like, I am definitely a shitty family member, but it's like, you know, there's so many layers to you, and it's your humanity. And so you go off and you develop yourself, in this inherently selfish way, right? Like you're eating more calories, you're taking calories from the world, you're taking cush living from the world, especially at the top end, right? Like you're doing ice baths and like I have an awesome chili sleep, right? Like I can get my room to the right temperature with a space heater and then have my chili sleep get my body to the right temperature. It's like that is decadence. I mean, that is ridiculous decadence. And even though I'm broke, I live on $0 a month or like a few dollars more than that. It's like that feels very decadent every day. And but it's not the point, right? Like the point is not biohacking. I think that's why I resisted it for a long time to be like, I'm a biohacker, or like this is something that I do. And I think it's a good summary. It's a good like Cliff Notes thing. But the idea that I would just be messing with the data, it has to have a and then what. And I think the running does too.
Hmm.
And then what? It's like, well, then I'm a more solid person. So like my kid never has to ask me, well, what if it gets hard and I want to give up? They'll just see that you just put out, like you just do the thing. Like you define your dream and you chase it as hard as you possibly can until you can't stand on your own volition anymore, or proverbially can't stand on your own volition anymore. And that's it. And that burns away existential dread like nothing else that I've found. And I think I'm just on the level of intelligence enough that if I really thought about it, I would have a lot of existential dread. And so the idea that I have something to do that's beyond myself, oh man, it would cause such problems for me. And so that brings me more solidity than I would ever have otherwise from my sport into my friendships or building this team, or like the Ultra House Durango being its own kind of brand at this point, and all of us vagrants just training together and living in the trailhead and chasing the dream. And so that's everything.
I think there's also a lot to be said for the selfishness and the supreme self belief of your sport, and for that matter, any individual sport. And I've seen this in the media for, across, it happens a lot in fighting or combat sports where people, a fighter will call out there, I'm going to knock you out in the first round. Like, wow, that guy's so cocky. It's like, well, if he didn't fully believe in himself or herself, they probably wouldn't be where they are. And so, in your sport, same thing. It's like if you go into the race thing, yeah, I'll probably come in like, 20th place. It's like, well, the point of the race is to win. At the end of the day, we can talk about having fun and self exploration and all these things, but you show up to play the sport to win the sport, whatever it is. And having this supreme self belief doesn't mean that you think that you are necessarily better than others. It's just you're going to show your best self, put your best effort forward due to all of the amazing training that you've done, doing all the right things, checking all of the boxes, and that's going to lead to an exceptional result. And so I think that we can extrapolate that to everything in life. You don't show up to your job thinking, yeah, I'm just going to be the schlep at the company for forever. You show up at your job and it's like, well, I'd like to think that I'm really good at what I do. Otherwise, you should probably do something about that to try and improve yourself. So I think that where I'm kind of going with this is whether you always had this self-belief, this extreme self-belief, or if you developed it over time, and how did you go about developing that?
I think part of it is just the objective reality of the situation. Like if I'm if I'm worried about something, I'm going to do something about it. And that's innate. Like that is an innate curiosity that comes from probably from having basic needs met. If I had grown up in horrible foster care or something, I wouldn't have the freedom or the drive or the need, the whole. I would have a void filled just by getting basic needs met, that I wouldn't need to go. I mean,
Mm.
there's a reason that the 99 percenters in this sport, the 1 percenters that are winning are broke, starving artists. And the 99 percenters that are participating are upper middle class working people that add value to society and are like actually doing the thing, that aren't opting out of real life by being athletes, whatever that might mean. And so there's this little like dichotomy that has to be considered when we talk about any of this. But the idea that we need this drive, if you're struggling and hustling just to float, you're not going to need to go make yourself miserable on the weekend, right? But then at the same time, if you're a lion in a field of lions here, and you're going out there to compete, and you've done every little thing that you can. I mean, I might not be talented, but I have enough talent that you're gonna have to find something that I'm not doing to do, or you're going to have a lot more talented than me to compete with me. And so with that in mind, I mean, that's a big, at a certain point, you're in free fall. And I talk about that during the event or during the weeks before or the months before or the lifestyle. But at a certain point, you're stacking these quotidian things, these things, the monk mode, as I call it, of just like, what do I need to do every single day that in 8 weeks, whether it felt good or not, I will be a monster on race day. And I've gotten really, really good at that. It's no longer playing with fire to make sure that my fitness is right on the day. I know exactly how to do it at this point. And that's from, 12 years of running logs, of like logging everything that I can possibly do and making these little tweaks. You better come in with so much more talent than me that you don't need that. Otherwise, you got 12 years to make up for me. And guess what? I'm going to keep logging. I'm going to keep learning, and stuff's going to keep changing. And you have to, like the Red Queen, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in place at the top level of sport, right? You have to be moving and moving and moving and getting better and better and better and better just to stay in place, because young, hungry dudes with better training or better hacking or better something, even if it's better drugs or better shoes or like these things that we don't really wish were in the game. If you ask me, I wish it was just raw naked human bodies against raw naked human bodies. But you better come in there with some assets that I don't have, that I can't possibly acquire, because what gives me the confidence is that I've done everything that I possibly can. And that gives me a lot of swagger. And then, at this point, I'm training with some of the best people in the world. I didn't run D1, but two of my training buddies that I've spent the most mileage with in Durango were savagely fast D1 runners. And it's like, all right, I can eat your lunch almost every time that we go to the well together. Like I will do what you're gonna do, and I will do it smiling. And so it's like, just because I've never done the thing, I never ran a 355 mile, but it's like, if I can train with somebody that did, that gives me a lot of confidence. And going out of my way to then train with some of these amazing athletes that I have is is awesome. And it's a rush, and it's a gift, and it's a blessing, and it's all these things. But it also gives you a lot of confidence going into race day to think, that's where the individual sport and the team sport kind of merges. A lot of, you mentioned fighters. A lot of fighters talk about their teams, and that
Mm.
would seem weird to me if I didn't live that same lifestyle. Like, listen, dude, we're monsters. You're not gonna come in here and think that you have enough talent or enough, half marathon speed or something to come roll with us for some event, right? It's like we're doing the thing. Like we're measuring sleep, dude. Like we're giving stuff up. We're fat adapting in the preseason. It's like we're doing stuff that the average runner is just not willing to do. If you're over here laboring over like, oh, if I could I could probably be a little faster if I gave up beer. It's like, dude, you really do get to a point where it's not how bad do I think this thing is for me, and it's, is this thing benefiting me? Because once you realize there's value in giving things up just for the sake of giving them up, the world is open to you. And that's when I know that I've given up things that other people won't give up, even if I think they were neutral things to begin with. That gives me an edge and gives me a little bit of like primal raw, like I will crush your head and eat your freaking heart. Like that gives me a little bit of something that you
Mm.
just can't touch from a relaxed life. And so we can that for ourselves, at least temporarily. You mentioned the small amount of money in running. My juiciest sponsor contract is all going into stock right now, so that I don't see a freaking dollar of that. And I was $6.40 over my bills last month. Like that's how freaking close. And I don't spend money on anything. I don't spend money to travel. I don't spend money to race. I am a monk, dude. Like I am not. And that gives me a lot of, I think, internal power and clarity of like, I'm doing the thing. And when you're gonna come in here and say, well, I have this rich life and all these things, and I get to cut back once a week, or I get a cheat day, or I get whatever it is, then you have no business talking. You have no business being at the same table as me when it comes time to compete, because I'm doing the thing. You have to root against me. You have to root for Rocky instead of Apollo Creed. It's like I'm doing all the things. Like, and I've been doing them for a long time. Like this ain't no montage. Like this is day in, day out. My training buddy DJ looked at me this morning and says, oh, 40, whatever it was, 46 and a half or 47 and a half more training weeks. And he's talking about till World's Toughest Mudder next year. He's talking about till the World Ultra Obstacle Course racing already. His hands are all beat up. He had his first few real sessions back, and he's already talking about next year. And those are the people that I want to be around. I want to surround myself by that. And then we all look at each other, and it becomes normalized. And that's real living. It's you're not going to convince us that it's not, and that has power in and of itself. Just the I'm okay calling it faith, that it's real or that it matters. That's okay by me. Maybe it doesn't, but if I can see a lifetime of work ahead of me on this path, it it seems like it behooves me to just set about doing the work. Don't think, well, what about this other path? Well, what about this? What if I'd be better at that? Or what if I'd be happier with that? Dude, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. It's like my primary characteristic is that I'm happy. And I think I only know that because I'm a single male who like dates around a little bit. It's funny when like you have a romantic connection and it's like, well, what do you see in this? And she's like, you're the only person in my life that's really, really happy. Like you're happy. And it's like, damn, like that's a scarce resource out there for somebody that's like incredibly articulate and intelligent. Like I have a type, right? And to see that reflected back to you is validating and eye-opening. And I think that's where the truth lies to me, or at least enough of a truth for me to put faith in it, that I would rather set about doing this work and just spend the lifetime that I can see to do, because that, like I said, that saves me from existential dread, if nothing else. It gives me something to do every day while I'm, because there's that aspect of it as well as an athlete. Not to keep preaching on this same topic, but there's just so many different ways that I've spun this, and I would love to just keep brainstorming until I can get it just right, and then make it into a chapter in a book someday. But this athlete furthering the dialogue is great, but the setting about of work to give you kind of this purpose is so much more than any kind of athletic thing, and it really does.
Oh, I think I lost you there. Anthony may have cut out right at right at a climactic point. Hopefully he can come back in, or I'll have to cut this out and get us back on. But let's just give this a second. Okay.
Is that doing the thing?
There we go.
Me?
No, we're back.
Is that you?
We're back.
Is that the app?
All right, there we go. So finish off what you were saying, because you did get cut off and cut out there.
Yeah, no, that was almost a perfect spot. I was like, I don't know, let's talk about diet or something, because it's just like you get so spun up into all this, and it's so much more than athletics to me. But then I think we waste a lot of time thinking about why we know things, and there's certain things that we just know, and encompassed in that is the next step to take. And if you stop thinking so damn much about why this might be the best thing, or like what this might get you, and you just take the next step, then you'll learn something, and you might even become a different person by the time you have to take the third or fourth or fifth step. So if you can't see all the things if you can't see the finished result, just keep connecting the dots until maybe you can see what the big picture was. And that's an act of faith, for sure. That's faith in your highest self, or whatever you want to call it, God with a capital G or a lowercase g, or however you want to cut this universe.
Absolutely.
Faith.
I think a lot of it, just trying to summarize everything you just said, it comes from the work that you're doing. You know what you're doing. You have conviction in what you're doing, and in yourself, and in the work that you are putting in and day out. You know that you are doing the absolute most that you can do and leaving nothing on the table. And that's where the confidence comes through, and this logical next step of your evolution as a runner and as a person just comes. You don't know what you're going to be 6 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, but you know that whatever the next step is, you're going to do that, and you're going to take that next step with as much vigor as you possibly can. And that is probably what separates you from most other people on, again, both an athletic standpoint and just a human standpoint. Is, like you said, you are genuinely happy, and that is uncommon, and that's unfortunate. But most people are kind of just going through the motions and getting through stuff, and they take the next step, but not consciously. It just happens to happen. And when you take that next step with your whole leg and hip and everything into it, that makes a little bit more of an impact, a little bit bigger of a footprint in the ground, if you will.
Yeah, big time.
I want to talk a little bit about overcoming the ankle injury that you had recently. Explain like what that injury was, and like what that process recovering from the injury was like.
Man, there's always something that I'm dealing with. I guess the only one that took me out in the last year, like, so we're talking like June, July,
Yeah-ish.
it must have been. Yeah. I had an avulsion fracture in my fifth metatarsal. So like that little, if you feel on your foot, there's this little spot on the outside of your foot where your bone kind of like makes this like V shape and pokes out. And where one of your ankle stabilizers that does this kind of movement, this E version, if you will, and where your fibularis muscles insert. When I was getting all revved up and getting ready for marathoning, it wasn't during a hard workout. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just this little tilt in the road, and I stepped into and had an audible. I couldn't tell if I
Oh.
felt it through my body and felt it in my ears or if I heard it, but this like pop coming up from, I don't even remember which foot it was, which is a really good sign. and and just basically what happens is your bone has this layer over it and just kind of popped this little chunk of bone off of it just by being so powerful. It'd be like if you put a really strong electric motor in your standard in like an old beater Honda Civic and then just floored the thing. Like just because the engine is strong in my, in this case, like the cardiovascular function and the muscular system all revved up, and coaches use the word muscle tension, which really doesn't refer to anything at all. But I guess it's like recruitment or excitation of muscle fibers, I guess we could argue. And so you get all revved up. And so I just yanked a chunk of my bone off of itself through a stabilizing muscle, basically. And it wasn't in some sexy trail run or anything. It was just, I wasn't underfed. It wasn't anything like that. It was just freak accident, I guess. Since then, I infrared every single morning. But since then, I have been infrareding my feet exactly because they tend to be kind of like Achilles. Like they tend to be the one thing that I'm using to lead my body into the fire instead of baking them. And so that's a slight adaptation. But coming back from that, it's a broken bone. Like it took weeks. And so like I was able to hit it with platelet rich plasma, PRP. Dude, PRP is amazing stuff. If you have somebody, make the best relationship you possibly can. If you don't have somebody, come to Durango, stay with me. We'll shoot you up for $100 or $150. Like it doesn't need to be thousands of dollars because it's your own plasma, right?
Yeah.
It's your own platelets. And so I hit it with PRP. I was able to cut the projected recovery time in half, and to come back guns freaking blazing when I came back instead of teetering back into fitness. I don't ever like to get out of shape, so I'm always a couple of weeks removed from a 100-mile week, whether that be in the taper, preseason, postseason, whatever. I can always at the drop of a hat, with 3 days notice, I can do 100 miles or 120 miles in 7 days and have my body feel good. And so I was training my face off through recovery and just doing everything that I can. And so I was taking saunas very seriously. That gets a little bit of cardiovascular function. I love having a sauna space in the house. They used to call them pocket saunas. I really like that brand name.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Faraday now, but sauna space, if you're not familiar with them, is awesome. You flick it right on. I don't typically let it heat up all that much, and hop in there, and I can dump buckets of sweat out within half an hour or 45 minutes. And so I was taking my saunas really seriously to maintain cardiovascular fitness, and I was doing everything that I can on the muscular end to make sure that I was symmetrical and keep everything talking. And then did a solid stint of microdosing on the comeback, where every single Monday I was microdosing some psilocybin and some other synergistic stuff along with that to make sure that my whole system was communicating and that everything was staying supple and not holding on to that tension of or that distrust, I guess, with my body.
Mm.
And I was able to come right back into it, and I've had no compensatory injuries or re-injury or anything like that. And I had a really bomber fall mixing it up with obstacle course racing. I'm having a lot of fun training for this marathon, training for the Houston Marathon. And so I'm even crashing and burning at the obstacle course world champs and then crashing and burning at the Houston Marathon. I feel like that's such a good double that I'm just happy to see both of those things on one person's calendar, that I'm proud to be doing all of this. And so, yeah, I mean, injuries like that, I can tell just hearing myself brief it, like that took nothing out of me. That didn't take the wind out of my sails. It was a lot of fun. It's a new learning experience. And once you start framing things as like, this is this dance with my body, then sometimes your body gives you effortless flow and all the speed you can possibly handle. And your job is to just get your brain out of the way and stop inhibiting that. And sometimes it's, oh, got some dogs barking. And sometimes the process is beautiful and blissful and easy and exactly what you want. And then sometimes there's a certain level of receptivity that has to be involved. And I'm an integrated person at this point in my life, man. I mean, I have sweat and cried and held shaman's hands enough times to feel like I can say that with a certain level of confidence. And I that's vital when you end up hurt, right? I mean, when you end up hurt, you can't say, especially when you're doing this professionally, the existential dread that I was kind of like teetering around earlier. is if you're digging a trench, at the end of the day, you dug a trench. There's a trench, and somebody gets to have water or sewage or whatever because you dug that damn trench. When you're an artist or you're an athlete or you're some type of content creator, it's really nebulous as to how much value you're actually bringing to the world because there's no ditch, there's no house built, and
Yeah.
when you can even compete, it's been vital for me that I can write and I can talk and I can connect because everybody gets injured. If I can't make heads or tails of being hurt just because I'm a professional, then I can't connect with the average person. I can't connect with real people, as I would call them, and that means more than being faster to me. And so I'm 30 years old. I've been hurt plenty of times and injured a few times, and there's a lot of value in that. And so I came back stronger than ever. I came back more hungry than ever. I came back more grateful than ever. And it sucks that wisdom and gratitude have such a high cost, but you can't really opt out of paying the cost. So you might as well get the benefit.
Yeah, no, I love that. The mental aspect of coming back from injury, I've always found I've been injured a number of times throughout my athletic career, if you will, and I've always thought or felt that the psychological impact that I had on me was the hardest. How do I train? How do I not fall back from where I've been? What can I do that's still pushing me forward? What things can I do to like still improve myself yet still work on my injury and push the boundary but not push it too much where I'm re-injuring that same injury. And so
Yeah,
in a sport like running, like what were some of the things that you were doing just because it's less obvious, like there's not, I don't know, tactics or different things you could be studying, film. I don't know if that's a thing in running, but what were you studying?
Right? Running is running.
Yeah.
I did a fair
Yeah.
amount of biking. I live in a biking town. I mean, as much as I like to say that Durango is awesome and the best place ever to run, and it is, it's a biking town. I mean, we invented certain aspects of mountain biking, and you still see the history here. You can see the trail names being test tracks and that sort of thing, and that's what this town is properly legendary for. And so, with that in mind, it's pretty easy for me to access like a really high end bike and just have one more thing to like literally cry with gratitude over. Of I have this awesome bike in this beautiful place and can go bike up these mountain passes that make the Alpe d'Huez look like a freaking hill, and I can really connect with all this. And so that's what I leaned on. But one thing, just like summary here, for what you're saying, what I'm saying, I think the important part is that you not change the way that you see yourself. You are still the same person you were pre-injury, and the goal might even still be exactly the same. And so you need to find a way to train through that to meet whatever the goal is that you've set for yourself, come hell or high water or injury, because that in the end of the day, that's where the value is. It's in walking the path, and it's in trying to win. There's no value in winning. Winning is empty and hollow and like kind of like it's always a letdown. Winning is meh, but trying to win is freaking everything, man. Trying to win, or whatever your definition of success is absolutely everything. And so I think it's very important for people, if they're dealing with an injury or if they're dealing with some kind of major setback, to say, what the person that I want to be, or the person that I was trying to become before I had this setback, what would that person do with this setback? And then do that. Because it's not always about running sexy splits. It's not always about racing. Sometimes it is about health and wellness. And sometimes there's some deep spiritual lesson in there, and your body's just letting you know something. And you should at least be open to all these ideas, because if you knew everything, if I knew everything, then everything would be perfect all the time, and there would be no point in living. But it's like, that's beside the point. But if you had it all figured out, you wouldn't be broken right now. So you should be receptive. There's a certain level of what I think of as the divine feminine, right? There's a certain level of like polarity of like the mission, the masculine, the mission, like get shit done, force against force, and the feminine, like receptivity. The universe is abundant. There's a million ways to do it. There's all this chaos to pull things out of and create from, and combining these two things through injury is possibly one of the best opportunities that I've had, and that's comparing it to like doing peyote with a Huichol shaman, right? I mean, getting injured can be incredibly profound and eye-opening, and so why not? If it can be, use it for its highest good.
It gives you that opportunity to look back. Sometimes you've been like going so far ahead, so much in that like get shit done mode, that you've been letting stuff slip through the cracks, and that may or may not be the reason that someone gets injured, whether that be in the gym, whether that be running in different team sport or whatever. But then that injury comes and it's like, okay, now I can't do the thing that I was doing before. So what can I do? You can either just be there and be in like the existential dread of like, oh, woe is me. And like, I'm, so sorry for my life and I can't do this and my leg hurts. And okay, you could do that and, that will get you nowhere, but fine. Or you could try and like look at it as like an opportunity and pull from that and say, okay, what can I learn from this? What can I learn about me? What can I learn about my body? What can I learn about the world or my sports to make this not happen again? And if it does happen again, or if that situation comes up again, I step on a rock that's a little bit sideways. How do I make this injury not happen again when I step on that sideways rock? Because it's going to happen. You're running on trails, you're running on open road. There's rocks, there's uneven ground, there's things happen. This is just part of sports and part of life. If you want to extrapolate that in your job, there's going to be obstacles that present themselves, and you can't just fall or succumb to the same obstacle or challenge every single time, right? You've got to be able to overcome those and become a better person.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for disillusionment. And I think that's something that I've had from a very young age. My mom asserts that she's in the nature camp on that, not the nurture camp. She asserts that I was like that from the get-go. Both my parents do, really, to be fair. That from the time that I could tie my shoes, I would rather flounder and figure out a way to tie my shoes than to let you pedantically explain that everybody ties their shoes this way. And I'm like that still. I mean, I am very much like that still of, okay, well, everybody uses wetsuits to stay warm at night, but I got a better idea. And you know what? I'm going to bet my race that I have a better idea. And it's like, did it go right? No. Was it due to the not wearing a wetsuit? 100%, 80%. So it's like, but you know what? I now have a respect and a confidence, and I still think there's a better way out there. But the times when things don't go the way that you planned on doing, that's your chance to see that you don't have all the answers. And that should be an exciting thing. That shouldn't check your ego. That should be an exciting thing. That means you are doing so well, you are finding happiness, you are making progress with a shitty worldview. Now there's an opportunity right here sitting glaring in front of you to correct your worldview. And next time you're going to be even happier, even faster, even more successful, even sexier with your clothes off. Like, you are going to crush, but you need to integrate this. Don't blindly keep going forward. This force versus force thing here. If you're getting a download, take the download.
And that's where the true fun of it comes in, is trying something new. If you do something that everyone else is doing all the time, then you're going to continue to get those same results. But, it seems like maybe a poor decision performance-wise in hindsight to not use the wetsuit because it resulted in not winning. But the goal wasn't really maybe to win. Maybe it's having fun, like you said. That's where the real fun is, in trying to win. So by using a slightly different tactic and trying to win, if you would have won, you would have been like, wow, Anthony revolutionized the sport. Everyone's going to do this now because he won, and that's it. We all do this, right? Like in football, this happens all the time. A coach will make a bad call, what everyone perceives to be a bad call, and the play doesn't work. It's like, wow, what an idiot. And then sometimes a coach makes a bad call, but it works out, and they happen to score a touchdown. It's like, wow, genius play. It's like, well, it was the same level of intelligence in those two calls. Just one of them happened to work and one of them didn't. And you can analyze that to the nth degree, but it's the fun of trying to win. That's where the real magic is. And, experimenting and saying like, okay, this is a plausible idea. Let's roll with it, see what happens, and then just go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that's everything. And I think that's one of my things, right? When I said that the value in living an extreme life is finding something that other people wouldn't find and gifting that to people. If there's something that I could promulgate, it's that, right? I mean, curiosity, man. You don't have all the answers, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That means as happy or unhappy as you are, there's more things out there. If you are already playing the game and you already understand all the rules and you already have all the pieces, you've already assembled this whole thing, and all you can do is let your strategy keep unfolding the way that it is, that's a sad worldview. It's no wonder people have depressive issues. It's like, that's a rough place to live when you're set on your track, and that's just that. And so the idea that at any point even the idea that you are those things that you could be is an interesting idea to me. Like, you aren't everything that you are. You aren't everything that you know. You're everything that you could know. You're everything that you could be. You're everything that you could do. That's fascinating, right? And that has nothing to do with athletics necessarily. That's like, you could snap your fingers and become this whole different person, and that's so much more.
this is where this concept of accessing more of yourself or creating more of yourself, I think, overlaps in both of our lives. I'm not an ultramarathon runner. You are a long distance runner and an athlete. I do sports and exercise, obviously, but I'm not a professional athlete or competitive athlete of any kind. But we both, the reason that we met is through the Wukiyo brand, which is about accessing more of yourself, using these nootropic supplements and combinations of ingredients to access more of you. And so that translates to me doing podcasts, to me coaching people, to me writing, and to you and all the things that you do. And it's not just about the running or just about the coaching or the writing. It's about, how do I become more of me? How do I bring out more of what's inside to give that back out to the world? And I think that that's the most interesting part of the nootropics to me, is that they just allow you to access more of yourself. And we're so sheltered in what we do, in the life that we live for the most part, that trying to bring out that more real version of you and the fullest potential version of you is why I'm so fascinated by these things, and so happy with the Wukiyo stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think what you're saying is almost, it's like, that's almost quoting me verbatim, talking about like drugs at large. It's like, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't like alcohol as a drug. You know, like a wine tasting's great, or like a pairing with a meal's fine. But like the idea that I would take a sedative or a depressant is really odd to me, and has been for most of my life. So it's like, I just point that out to say that maybe I'm not like a genius. I didn't like figure this out. This is just kind of dumb luck that I'm wired this way. But the idea that, you know, I can have strategic caffeine and like nootropics. Like I took half an Apex this morning, and that's about all it takes to get me super, super rowdy and breeze me through my day. You know, I had a better writing session this morning. I had a more mindful sauna session this morning. My heart rate wasn't elevated. My breathing didn't feel all crazy like it does with other stimulating things. Having, you know, Apex in the quiver is a perfect example of drugs that make me more me. That's what substances should do. If they don't make you more me, more you, and if you don't want to be more you, then there's a bigger problem in there. There's something that needs to be addressed. And so when I talk about microdosing, or even you know, certain types of training, like very long, very slow training, or like Taoist tantric sexual ideas of like cycling energy, it really is all about like leveling yourself up from the base, from a spiritually cellular level, not just mitochondria. And so everything kind of ends up in the same bucket to my mind with that. And yeah, man, I saw Wukiyo immediately. I mean, I keep my fingers on the pulse in this whole sphere. I've been saying for a few years, somebody's going to have a smarter caffeine sup. We can do better than caffeine and taurine. We can do better than caffeine, taurine, and claiming that there's aminos in there, even though there's like 0.01 grams of tyrosine or something in there. It's like, that's shameful. Somebody has to do it right. And the value's already there. I mean, people are already spending the money, and they think they're buying these things already. And so having something really, really refined with a sexy approach. And, you know, my first conversation with Wukiyo was, we're edgy and we're different and we're not changing for anybody. And I was like, same. Like, let's freaking talk. And so we've been growing together, and now the product line is so much more than just essay. And man, that's an easy thing for me to see, that like you're playing with that and I'm playing with that. It's like, I think this guy gets something. I think he's in the know immediately. Little like fist bump from across the world there.
Yeah. For me, it was when I was introduced to it, I've tried multiple different nootropic supplements over the years, and you know, you keep hearing about it. Oh, this one is great. This one has this something or other in it. And it's like, okay, sure, let me try it. Oh, yep, it's good. Like, it's all right. And then Wukiyo comes around again, and it was the same kind of thing. Like, all right, sure, like I'll give it a go. Now, it was introduced to me by some people, or one person, Matthew Buson, who like I 100% trust. And so when he's saying it's legit,
yep,
and he's done a lot more testing and work than I have, if he's saying it's legit, then I'm like, all right, I'll pay attention. If it wasn't from him, I probably wouldn't have. Like, I would have just blown it off and be like, yeah, I'm not interested. I don't need this. It's not really doing all that much for me. But I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And I was blown away by how effective it is, and how good it made me feel, and across the board with the product line. I almost honestly think that the essay is almost too good. I'm not sure that I can handle it. I only take it on days where I've got a lot on my plate, because otherwise, like my brain is like too much on fire, and it's like I can't go to
aim it all.
Yeah,
first,
exactly. Yeah. It's yeah, the fact that it's almost too good is a good testament to it. But the bliss supplement as well is another huge one. And I don't want to go too much down the whole rabbit hole of psychedelics, because that's another like several hours
Yeah, totally. Another
of
podcast.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as getting out of your own way, dealing with the injuries, keeping your brain connected to your body and also disconnected from your body, I think that's where the microdosing of that stuff like really comes into play, and a lot of people need to tune into that
Big time.
a lot
I mean,
more.
that's how
As
you
something you
carry
alluded
these
to
things.
with your injury.
That's how you carry these things, right? I mean, the body does keep score. It keeps track of these
Yeah,
traumas and micro traumas, and you can't grit yourself through pain. Pain is inhibitory, and you're not, again, like if you're gritty and I'm happy, I'm gonna beat you over the
yeah,
course of a long event. And not only that, but we're gonna finish, and like I'm still gonna be happy, and you're still gonna be gritty. So if brain's the finish line, like sure you can stoically bear it or something, but like I'm gonna be soft, and I think that connection to yourself can be amplified by strategic intentional psychedelic use, and probably any. I mean, I think one of the things that I've been pushing for is everybody says, oh, the body keeps score, the body keeps score. Okay, that's fine, but that means the body keeps score of transcendental experiences too. So when you go do something crazy and awesome, you have an apex day, and you take that and you fire yourself out of a freaking cannon, and you have the best run you have and the best riding you have. Guess what? Neuroplasticity, like physical response, your heart, all these things, your body's keeping score of that transcendence too. So why not that too? Why is that only a negative thing? It's only referred to like post traumatic stress. It's like we're not talking about post traumatic growth. It's like the body does keep score, and it keeps score of good and bad in there. So open your eyes up. There's so much good to see, and play with drugs that make you more you.
Do you titrate your use of any of the Wukiyo products or any of the other
Dude,
stuff that
everything.
you take for the purpose of like not being so reliant on them? Because something you alluded to earlier was like this, this primal attitude of like, I don't need all that stuff. It's just on me. I can do all the things. But there obviously is like some amazing tools that do help us significantly. And so, you want to use those, but you don't want to be dependent on them at the same time. How do you marry those two concepts in your head?
I do minimum effective dose of everything. So it's like I've found that like I use dose, like everyday dose. It's this coffee blend. It's 39 milligrams caffeine. I can probably do that once every 24 hours. And, even me historically, like I can do 100 milligrams or 150 milligrams of caffeine every single day and then take a day off. I have no headache. I have no sleep issues. I have no anything. And part of that is like I'm eating a lot of choline, right? Like I'm taking care of my brain. I didn't play with any serious substances until well into my mid to late 20s, and it's like so my brain is very not just plastic but supple, like it rebounds easily. And even with that, I don't like to do anything every day, and if I am doing it every day, it's on a very finite amount of time. 2 weeks, it's periodized, right? It's like meet me right where I am for race day, and then race day you go to war. Like you go to kill, you don't go to get killed, right? It's like you're pulling out all the freaking stops, like they're coming for your heart. And so I will periodize everything, but I do 2 weeks postseason and then at least the first full week of training. So that might be 3 weeks total. That might be 4 or 5 weeks total of no pills, no powders, no potions, no nothing. And that lets me kind of reset. And then I reintroduce them one at a time to kind of revalidate, what do I think I'm getting out of this, and am I actually getting it out of it?
Yeah, that's amazing. It just comes back to that, like the running log. Okay, I did these things, and this was my performance, right? This ultimate awareness of what you're doing, so that you actually do know that it's not just the placebo effect that is taking place to make you feel good that you're taking it. And I think that's actually valuable. Like one thing I think I've been critical of saying is like you don't need pre-workout supplements, and I do kind of believe that. But but for some people, if you take your whatever regular drugstore pre-workout that's not all that good anyways, and you take it and that's the thing that like gets you jacked up to go to the gym, and not even like really physically or physiologically jacked up, but just like mentally jacked up, then like by all means, like it's if not doing that much harm, like go for it. If the placebo effect is working for you, lean into it.
My scientist hat says, is it a theory that's testable and repeatable and we can come up with a mechanistic idea? Is there ancestral use? Is that sort of thing? My athlete side says, does it work or does it not work? Because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter the mechanism. Does it make me faster? Does it make me more joyful? And that's the only proof that I need. Man, I'm realizing
exactly. I think a part of it,
battery has been dropping like 1% every like 3 minutes, and I just dropped my last percent, and we're probably like, what are we, like,
Okay.
4?
Yeah, we're close, but let's wrap this up real quick
Okay.
then. Do you have any last message that you want to get, and rattle off your contact info before I lose you?
Dude, at Anthony Kunkel, it's all phonetic. Look me up. I don't want to get cut off by my phone battery dying, but look me up. I have a pilgrimage this spring that y'all are welcome to join for. I'll pick you up from the Albuquerque airport and everything. I do running camps all the time, and they don't need to be running. They can be obstacle course racing. I've had nature photographers here. I've had painters here. I've had graphic artists here. If you want to disappear and take your lifestyle, but not yourself, completely seriously, this is your chance. I don't charge anything. My front room has 7 beds in it. I've never filled it. My batting average is like 25,000 invites like this right now to get one person here. So you're not imposing. Show up here. I'll house you. I'll show you a good time in Durango. And yeah, man, yourself included, dude. Bring yours. Come up here and go monk mode yourself, whatever that needs to mean for you. And yeah, man, that's the only call to action I can do, right? Come share my life. I'll cook for you, whatever I can possibly do.
Beautiful, man. Thank you so much. Everyone, Anthony Kunkel on Instagram, across the places, look him up. We're rushing to finish this, but we will do a part 2 because I think there's so much more that we have to uncover and to discuss here, and possibly bring some others in. So
yeah,
thank you very much for listening, everybody. I appreciate each and every one of you. Follow him on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram, Daniel Yoris. Like, share, subscribe to the podcast, all of those things. That's it. Go outside, be a good person, and we'll see you next time.